It's become our tradition at this time to turn our thoughts and prayers to our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel. We'll please rise together for Tefillah L'Medina, prayer for the state of Israel. You can find the text of the prayer back inside cover of your prayer books, and we'll read together both the Hebrew and the English. Avinu Shebashamayim Tzor Yisrael V'Goalo, Barech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu. Hagein Aleha Be'evrat Chastecha, Ufros Aleha Sukat Shlomecha, Ushlach Orcha Va'amitcha L'Roshea Sarah V'Yoatzea, Takneim Be'etza Tova Milfanecha, Chazek et Yedei Meginei Eretz Kodshenu, Vanchilem Eloheinu Yeshua Va'ateret Nitzachon Ta'atreim, V'natata Shalom Ba'aretz, V'simchat Olam Liyoshveh, V'nomar Amen. Rock and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, the start of flowering of redemption. Shield it with your love, spread over it the shelter of your peace, guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Establish for them your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of the defenders of our holy land. Cause them to inherit our God deliverance. Place the crown of victory upon them. Give the land peace, everlasting joy to its inhabitants. Let us say Amen. You may be seated, and we'll turn now to page 336 for the Ashrei. I think we have a couple of Ashrei helpers coming up. No? No? No Ashrei. We're Ashrei-less. Okay, it's fine. We're turning now to page 340, and I will ask if you'll rise as we return the Torahs to the Ark. Page 340.
Hallelujah, et Shem Adonai, ki niskav Shemo levado, Odo al eretz v'shamayim, Vayarem keren le'amo, Tehila lekol hasidram, Libnei Yisrael am kerobo. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Page 346.
Dilek haktov natati lachem, Torati al tazovu. Etz chaim hi lama kazikim ba betom keha meushal elakeha darkeno am bekol netivoteha shalom Ashivenu Adonai Elecha benashuva Kadesh, Kadesh Yameinu Kadesh Yameinu Kekedem
May be seated. I told AJ he could take a break for a few minutes. He's been a busy guy this morning. I grew up in upstate New York in a small town called Binghamton. Many of you may have heard of it because of the university that exists there. But I always have felt that I kind of grew up in two neighborhoods at the same time. So there was that neighborhood in Binghamton, grew up on the corner of Leroy and Matthew Streets there. That was a very typical neighborhood for upstate New York in the 1970s. The homes there were filled exclusively with white folks, middle class, hardworking, honest, patriotic, kind of salt of the earth people. And all of the children, every single one, went to public school. And of course, to get to class, we walked from the time we were 9 or 10 years old. Walked to school, walked back half a mile, or whatever it was. And as far as I can remember, my family was the only Jewish family in that neighborhood, the only one. But then there was my other neighborhood that I also feel I grew up in. It was a place that I visited with some frequency, really pretty much on a daily basis, starting in 1969, I would say maybe from 1969 till about 1973, something like that. Many of you have also been to that neighborhood as well, or you've traveled there maybe with your children or your grandchildren. It's a place that is probably intended to be like New York City area, maybe somewhere in Brooklyn, something like that. It's on a street named Sesame Street, right? You remember that? And all of the colorful characters that lived in that neighborhood. There was Kermit the Frog, of course, soft-spoken and kind of existentially challenged all the time, musing philosophically about the difficulties of life. There was Big Bird. How could you forget Big Bird? I mean, 8-foot tall, bright yellow canary kind of creature. And of course, Ernie and Bert. They were sort of like the odd couple of Sesame Street. One orange and one sort of mustard-colored. That was Bert, the mustard-colored one. And then you had my favorite Muppet. My favorite Muppet was Oscar the Grouch. I just loved that guy, like living in a garbage can. What could be more interesting than that? But in a way, the most amazing thing about Sesame Street was the diversity of the human characters on the show. You probably remember, if you're familiar with the show at all, the kindly Mr. Hooper. That was Big Bird's friend. He ran sort of like corner grocery store. There was a Hispanic family in that neighborhood, Maria and Luis, their daughter. They had a daughter. Her name was Gabby. There were black characters that lived in Sesame Street. There were white characters, Asian characters, handicapped characters, old characters, young characters. I mean, every kind of person that you could possibly meet on a New York street. And if you've been in New York lately, you know you meet every kind of person on a New York City street. And in any one skit from the show, you could see any or all of those human characters interacting with the colorful Muppets. So the Sesame Street neighborhood was very different than my actual neighborhood, but I had a sense from watching the show that there was actually a big, wide world out there with all kinds of people in it. I just felt I had not yet had the opportunity to meet them when I was growing up in that small town in upstate New York in the 70s. So little did I know that as an adult, I would be living in a neighborhood more like the one that I was watching on TV, more like the Sesame Street neighborhood when I was grown up. Gail and I moved downtown about a year ago at this point. It's a new neighborhood, very few Jews in the neighborhood. In fact, of the 100 or so townhouses in the neighborhood that we're living in, it's being constructed, but about 100 units in place at this point. We're the only unit that has a mezuzah on it, the only one in the entire neighborhood. There are black families, there are Hispanic families, there are Indian families, there are Asian families, there are Muslim families in the neighborhood. Our next-door neighbors are Muslim. We share a wall with them. And even plain old Caucasian families there as well. So it's the kind of neighborhood that feels very familiar if you grew up watching Sesame Street. So I've been thinking lately, particularly, about how lucky I am, how lucky I feel to live in such a diverse neighborhood. You know, when you work full-time and professionally in the Jewish community, you can sometimes lose track of the fact that not every place is like Pikesville. You know what I mean? Pikesville's an unusual place. Working in the Jewish community, you spend so much of your time with Jews, you spend so much time thinking about Judaism and so much time focusing on Jewish issues, so much emotional energy worrying about what's happening to the Jewish community and to Israel, and particularly over the last year plus, that you actually need a reminder every once in a while that it really is a big world out there, that there really are all kinds of folks out there in the world, all kinds of folks. And by the way, important to say, to note, that God cares just as much about those other folks as God cares about me and my family or any neighborhood in Pikesville or down the Park Heights corridor. Doesn't make any difference in God's eyes. There's a well-known debate recorded in the Midrashic literature. It's between two great rabbis, Ben Azai and Ben Akiva, Rabbi Akiva, rather. Their disagreement centers on a single question. It's an interesting question. If you had to find the single most important verse in the entire Torah, the single most important verse in the entire Torah, in other words, there's one verse in all of those verses, and it sums everything up. What's that verse? And Ben Azai and Rabbi Akiva have a big disagreement about their Jews, so they're having a disagreement about it, right? So were I to ask you that question, my guess is you probably would choose, or at least a high percentage of people in the room would choose a verse from the second of this morning's two Torah portions, which is Kiddushim, Parshat Kiddushim, because in that portion we have a verse that over time has come to be known as the golden rule verse, which is love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. That was from this morning's Torah portion. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. And that, if you think about it, pretty much seems to capture it, right? I mean, that if you do that, if you follow that verse, then at the end of the day, you'll probably be following many of the other rules, laws, and ideas that the Torah expresses. And so that is, in fact, the verse that Rabbi Akiva chooses. He says, that's the verse, if you have to pick one, that sums it all up. Love your neighbor as yourself. But the other rabbi, again, whose name is Ben Azai, disagrees. He cites a verse from the 5th chapter of Genesis. It's in fact, the first verse of that chapter. It's a verse that you probably have never thought about before, you've never heard of. On the surface, it seems like an odd verse. This is what it says there. Zeh Sefer Toldot HaAdam, it says. Zeh Sefer Toldot HaAdam, which means this is the record of the line of Adam, like Adam, the first person. And then after that verse, you have this long list. I think it's about a 30-verse long list of genealogy. So it's one of these classic biblical sections. This one begat that one, begat that one. You know, it just doesn't seem to be all that interesting on the surface. And at first glance, because it's the beginning of a passage that's not that interesting, and because the verse itself seems to be a little bit obscure, Ben Azai's choice to say that's the most important verse in the Torah seems a little bit puzzling and odd. I mean, how could a verse like that trump the great verse from this morning's Torah portion, love your neighbor as yourself? But if you think about it for a moment, Ben Azai has what I think is an interesting point. He's got a leg to stand on, because if you say this is the record of the line of Adam, that is based on a fundamental principle that all people come from the same place. In fact, according to the Torah, all people come from the same person or people, potentially, right? And if that's the truth, then all people are equal. No person is any better than any other person, because we all come from the same place at the end of the day. Now, I doubt very much whether the creators of Sesame Street in 68 and 69 were familiar with the midrashic discussion between Ben Azai and Rabbi Akiva. You never know. I mean, you never know, but I doubt very much if they were. Back in 69, when Sesame Street came on, though, it was dealing with ideas that sound very contemporary to our ears today. It was dealing with issues like ethnic and racial tension, like equality, like diversity, all of those kinds of things. And also, it was dealing with issues like struggles that happened in the inner city. So just as much of a conversation then as those things are today. And no doubt, that's one of the reasons why the show depicted a neighborhood where there were all kinds of people from all kinds of places and all kinds of backgrounds, and where everyone treated everyone else with a sense of respect, common humanity, and dignity. Everyone understood intuitively that everyone's on the same level as everyone else. You'll probably remember the Sesame Street theme song. I'm not going to sing it. Where's the cantor's not here? So I'm not going to ask the cantor to sing it either, but you remember the beginning of the song. Sunny day, right? Remember the lyrics? Sunny day, sweeping the clouds away, on my way to where the air is sweet. Maybe you don't remember it, I don't know. To where the air is sweet. Can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street? I mean, how could you forget, right? It's such a simple lyric, and yes, it's a song for children, but we all remember it. We all remember it. Isn't that interesting? And maybe one of the reasons is because the question at the core of that lyric essentially is this: how do we get to that place, Sesame Street, that symbolic place where all people are respected regardless of race and religion and ethnic background and color and age? Sesame Street began to ask that question all the way back in 1969. We haven't figured the answer out yet, still a work in progress, but that's the place I think ultimately that we're looking for.
I was going to sing with you.
Oh no, I'm not going to. You want to sing it?
Only with you.
You want to sing it?
I have the words, I could do it. Where are you? Oh no, we have accompaniment. Ready? Hurry.
What key are they in?
Sunny day, sweeping the clouds away. On my way to where the air is sweet. Can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street? Thank you, Adric.
Shabbat Shalom.